What settings should you use for the best results, the best looking footage from the DJI Mini 3 Pro? Well, I've been flying the drone for a while now and I've settled on the ones I think work best for me, so hopefully they will work great for you as well. In this video, I'm going to go through each of the DJI Fly app settings menus, what I've set the settings to and why I haven't used some of the features, some of the ones I think you definitely should have turned on, and we'll take a look at things like the advanced gimbal settings, which will help you get them buttery smooth motions with your drone. I've got the app fired up, let's jump right in. So to get into the DJI Fly app menus, you want to tap the three dots on the top right of the screen. Let's start with the safety tab. Now a lot of these options in the safety tab don't directly relate to the camera itself, but some of these will help you get smoother footage. For example, the obstacle avoidance. When I'm out flying, most of the time I have this set to bypass. The reason I don't have it set to brake is because if I'm trying to get a smooth clip and the drone senses an obstacle, in brake mode it will come to a harsh stop. Now that is definitely one of the safer options, but it means that clip might be ruined because you get this harsh stop in the clip. So I have it set to bypass, which means when the drone sees an obstacle, it will simply fly around the obstacle, and it means that clip will most likely be usable. I have disable sideways flight turned to off because I want to be able to fly sideways, and I just have display radar map turned on. For flight protection, I have max altitude set to 120 meters, which is as high as you're allowed to fly, and I have max distance set to no limit. I just manage how far away I fly the drone myself. For auto return to home altitude, you want to have this set to a height higher than any of the obstacles or buildings in the area around you. When return to home kicks in, this is the height the drone will fly up to before it flies back to you. So you want to make sure the drone will rise up to a height that will clear them obstacles and buildings around you. Advanced safety settings. So if the signal gets lost, I have it set to return to home. I don't want the drone to descend because a lot of the time I'm flying over water, and I don't want it to hover in place. I want it to start to come back towards me if I lose signal. For emergency propeller stop, now this is if you hold your joysticks in a certain way that the propellers will cut out. I don't want this to happen in the air, so I have this set to emergency only. Now if you use these settings to get cinematic footage, then why not make a little side income using today's sponsor, Wirestock. Wirestock is a service that allows drone pilots to make money by selling their photos and videos as stock. Using Wirestock, you can upload your content to one location and they distribute it to all major marketplaces so that you don't have to make multiple accounts on each website. This is great because you have one account and can track everything in one location. They offer high royalty rates and discoverability, which is important as you want people to find your content. There are no fees when using Wirestock, they just take a 15% commission off every sale. They only make money when you do. So if using these tips you get great drone photos and videos, you can upload them to Wirestock quickly and start making a little side income. A big thank you to Wirestock for sponsoring today's video. If you want to get started, then head over to the link in the description and you can create an account now. Now if we go over to control. For control, under units, I have it set to metric because I'm in the UK. I have subject scanning turned off. So subject scanning, if turned on, will put a little plus icon over any subjects that it thinks it can track. I just do this manually by drawing the box over the subjects, so I don't need this. For gimbal mode, I have it set to follow mode. This means that the gimbal stays level to the horizon at all times, and I think this gives the most cinematic shots. In FPV mode, the gimbal will actually be tied to the movement of the drone. So as you fly right or fly left, the gimbal will actually rotate left or right and give you more of this fixed wing flying feel where the horizon is constantly changing. And now we come to the advanced gimbal settings. So let's take a look at normal mode first. I actually do most of my cinematic moves in normal mode. I think it's a perfect compromise between cine and sport. Sport is normally too fast for cinematic moves, but if you're up high, I find cine sometimes is too slow. It doesn't convey motion. You need to actually move the drone quite fast when you're up high to get that cinematic motion in your video clips. So I use normal mode probably most of the time. Looking at normal mode, first up is pitch speed, which I have set to 15. Now I actually think this is the default value, and this is one of the only ones I haven't actually changed. So pitch speed is how quickly the gimbal will pitch up and down. So as mentioned, that's set to 15. Pitch smoothness. So this is when you let go of the scroll wheel on the back of the controller, how long it takes for that gimbal to come to a stop. So I have this set to 20, just to get that buffering motion. For yaw rotation speed, which is the left-right rotation of the drone, I have this set to 60. And for yaw smoothness, again, I have this set to 20. So if I let go of the stick by accident, if I just take my thumb off it while doing a cinematic move, the drone will actually come to a smooth stop and potentially save that clip. Then taking a look at sport mode. Now, the primary use I personally use sport mode for is just getting into position quick. I rarely use it for cinematic moves. I just want to get the drone in the air, flick it into sport mode, get it over to my subject or my point of interest, and then put it into a different flight mode for getting videos. So for pitch speed, I have it set to 50 so that I can move the gimbal up and down really quickly. For pitch smoothness, I have it set to 10 because why wouldn't you want a little bit of buffer? Again, it just saves you if you accidentally let go of the stick. You still get a little bit of buffering in the movement. For yaw rotation speed, I have it set to 150 so I can turn the drone really quickly to turn it to look at my point of interest fast. And again, for yaw smoothness, I have it set to 20 just so I can have a little bit of smoothness in that motion if I ever do decide to use sport mode to do a cinematic move. Now for cine mode. Now I mainly use cine mode when I'm low to the ground and getting really slow, subtle movements. For pitch speed, I have it set to 10, so this is really quite slow, but it means even if I make quite drastic movements on the scroll wheel on the back of the controller, the gimbal will still move nice and slowly. For pitch smoothness, I have it set to 25. This is quite high, but it means even if you're coming off the scroll wheel, even trying to come to a slow stop when coming up to the horizon, that you'll get a really nice buffering motion and the gimbal will come to a really nice slow stop. Yaw rotation speed, 15, which is also quite slow. But again, I find if I'm rotating the drone in cine mode, I want it to be slow. I want a nice slow cinematic motion. And for yaw smoothness, again, 25. So if I let off that stick, the drone will come to a nice smooth stop. Under stick mode, you can actually change the movements the drone makes based on the inputs you make on the joystick. So for example, in stick mode 2, if you press up on the left stick, the drone will ascend. If I put it into stick mode 3, you'll see that the same movement up on the left stick actually makes the drone fly forward. So I personally use stick mode 2, but pick a stick mode which is best suited towards your muscle memory. For button customization, so in the new RC controller we have a C1 and C2 button in the back of the controller. So for C1 I have it set to recenter or tilt down the gimbal. So if the gimbal is looking somewhere between straight down and straight at the horizon and I press this button, it will recenter to the horizon. Then if I press it again, it will look straight down. And if I press it again, it will come back up to the horizon. So this allows me to recenter the gimbal quickly. I have C2 set to auto exposure lock. So this is if I'm using the auto exposure video mode, which I do use sometimes, and I want to be able to lock the exposure. Instead of pressing and holding on the screen, I can just tap this button. For the right dial, I have it set to zoom in and out. And then if I use the right dial while pressing the C1 button, I have it set to adjust the shutter speed up and down. And if I press the C2 button and use the right dial, I have it set to adjust ISO. Now under advanced, you can actually change how smoothly or quickly your drone reacts to inputs on the controller, again for cine, normal and sport mode. I haven't changed these at all, I've just left them default. Now for camera settings. So for format, I use MP4. For color, I use the normal profile. I find 95% of the time I use the normal color profile. The reason for this is when I'm making videos, I'm trying to turn them around as quickly as possible. So most of the time, I don't have the time to actually color grade the video in post. And I actually find the normal color profile to be excellent. So like I say, 95% of the time, I record my videos in the normal color profile. It just means I don't need to color grade them in post. Or if I do, it's very slight tweaks like adjusting brightness and saturation. I don't need to go in and do a full color grade on the video clips. But if you do want to do that, then use the Cinelight color profile. For coding format, I use H.264. And then for video subtitles, I have it set to off. This is where the drone overlays information about the location of the drone, the settings the drone is currently in, and it overlays that over the video as a subtitle track that you can view back when watching the video. I rarely use this information, so I have this set to off. For anti-flicker, I have it just set to auto, and then histogram I have set to on. Now histogram is one of the most important things to use if you want to expose your video correctly. So if I just come off the settings menu here for a second, this is the histogram here that I'm moving about the screen, and you can move it by pressing on it and dragging it around the screen. Now, I'm not going to go into how to use the histogram in detail in this video, but what I will say is if you're trying to expose your image properly, you want most of the graph to be in the center of the histogram. So if I give you an example here and I way underexpose this image, you can see that most of the graph is now crushing over to the left side. That is an indication that the image is underexposed. If I overexpose the image here by making it too bright, you can see that most, if not all, of the graph is now crushed over to the right of the histogram. So when it's exposed properly, what you'll find is the majority of that graph is actually in the center of the histogram. Peaking level I have set to off, but what peaking level will do is let you know if your image is in focus when you're using manual focus. So if I actually turn this off and put my camera in manual focus, you can see looking at the screen, it can be hard to know if your image is in focus. But if I go back into settings and turn peaking level to high, you can see that it puts a red outline around everything that is in focus. I have to be honest, most of the time I just leave it in autofocus, so for that reason I have peaking level turned to off. Now, overexposure warning is another really useful feature to have on. If I turn this on and I overexpose the image, you'll see that it overlays zebra lines around everything that is overexposed. For example, the table here I have the drone on. So this can be really useful to say, hey, okay, that's really overexposed. Pull the exposure back until you stop seeing that overexposure warning. For grid lines, you can turn these on. I only have the first one turned on. I find if you actually have them all turned on, I'll turn them all on now. There's too many lines in the screen for my liking. This is going to be personal preference, but I actually find just having the first one on works best for me and allows me to make sure my subject or my point of interest is in the center of the shot. Now, the last thing I want to do is quickly talk about the video settings I use when flying my drone. So I've actually found myself using auto settings a lot more recently than I used to before. Reason being is if I'm out on location and I want to get a shot really quickly, I actually find the auto settings does a pretty good job, but I have two tips if you're going to be using the auto settings. Firstly, I actually find if you underexpose the image slightly, you get a better looking image. The way to do this is to press the EV icon on the bottom right of the screen, and I find setting this to -0.3 or -0.7 results in a slightly better looking and more cinematic shot. The second tip is make sure you lock exposure when recording so that you don't get color balance and exposure shifts when you are recording a clip. Now, when I do fly in manual mode or pro mode, these are the settings I use. So if I tap on the bottom right of the screen, for white balance, I'll set this depending on the location to a value I think is right, and that means the white balance won't shift during the video. For resolution, I have set to 4K, and for FPS, I have it set to 30. For ISO, I have it set to 100, and I try to keep it at 100 as much as possible. The higher ISO you use, the more chance that you'll introduce grain and noise into your footage. For shutter, I have it set to 1/60. The reason for this is because I use the 180-degree rule for motion blur, and motion blur will make your videos much more cinematic. The 180-degree rule says that your shutter speed should be twice your frame rate. So because I record at 30 FPS, I have it set to 1/60. If you record at 60 FPS, then you set your shutter speed to 1/20. Now we're inside at the minute and it's dark, so 1/60 and 100 ISO looks fine. But if you're outside and you have it set to a lower shutter speed such as 1/60, you are going to need to use ND filters, so that's something to be aware of. So those are the settings I use in the DJI Fly app with the DJI Mini 3 Pro to try and get the best looking video possible. Hopefully they help. Why not try them advanced gimbal settings and see if it helps you get smoother motion with your drone. Now before you go, if you've liked this video and you've learned something new, please let me know by giving me a thumbs up and clicking that like button down below. And if you love all things drones and want to know how to get better photos and more cinematic videos with your drone, then I have a ton of other content on my channel to help you level up your drone game that I recommend you check out. Click that subscribe button, make sure the notification bell's on, and you won't miss any of my upcoming videos. If you want to see a few more of them now, here's a few I personally recommend. I'll not keep you back any further. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you over there.